In our spotlight this morning, Alec Murdaugh, his attorneys, all at the South Carolina Supreme Court pushing for a new trial. But even his own attorneys admit, quote, nobody wants to do this again. Much of this is centered around court clerk Becky Hill. The appeal is arguing that jurors heard improper evidence and accused the former clerk of court of improperly influencing the jury by pressuring them to reach a guilty verdict, therefore impeding the right to a fair trial.
Rhonda McElveen, who's the Barnwell clerk of court, was asked by Becky Hill, the Colleton clerk of court, to assist her during the Murdaugh trial. She testified under oath that she was told by Ms. Hill that she, being Ms. Hill, might write a book because she needed a lake house. A guilty verdict would sell more books. That was said before December of 22. We didn't pick a jury until January of 23. The best way to sell books was a guilty verdict. A guilty verdict would be better for the sale of books. She explained she had a financial incentive for a guilty verdict. She also made comments to her like, don't be fooled by the evidence presented by Mr. Murdaugh's lawyer. Watch him closely. Just before he testifies, look at his actions, look at his movements. Identical to the statements that I'm going to read you in just a moment by the jurors as they were questioned.
Now, Becky Hill initially denied those claims, but later pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice and perjury. That was back in December of 2025. She was sentenced to probation rather than prison time and resigned from her position. Now, the justices did not offer any expected time frame for their ruling. Convicted killer Alex Murdaugh continues to try to maintain his innocence, even though he's been convicted. You ask him, he'll tell you he didn't do it. I spoke to his attorney, Dick Harpootlian, not long ago, and he has said the same. He's maintaining his innocence, and they want this new trial. Question is, will they get the new trial? Let's bring in someone now who's followed this case very closely, representing some of the victims who've been victimized by Alec Murdaugh. Attorney Eric Bland. Eric, good morning to you. Give us your assessment, please, listening to the arguments on both sides. Whose side do you think has the stronger legal argument here?
Well, if you listen to the Supreme Court justices, and I think it was all five of them, I think the defense, the appellant, Alex Murdaugh, resonated more with them than the arguments from the state. It was shocking to a lot of us in the bar because we always knew that the issue of Becky Hill and juror tampering invokes the Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial, and we thought that they would grab onto that, but they were equally strong in questioning Creighton Wooders in the state on the evidentiary introductions by Judge Newman. They were critical of Judge Newman, not only on the issues of the financial crimes, but on all aspects of the phone evidence of the throwing of the phone, as well as the ballistic expert who testified to the bullets coming from, the bullet casings coming from certain guns, and almost said that it was, not objective and type of science that experts would follow. It was shocking, and I didn't think he would get a new trial on the state level. I always thought that on the federal level he'd have a more receptive ear. I didn't think our state Supreme Court would criticize a former Chief Justice, but they certainly did, and Becky Hill played a big role in that.
Yeah, she sure did, Eric. Let's take a look back at her in-court statement after pleading guilty.
There is no excuse for my mistakes. I am ashamed of them, and I will carry that shame with me for the rest of my life. I have already begun the hard work of rebuilding the relationships that I damaged by accepting responsibility, by seeking forgiveness from those that I love, and by repaying any improper bonus I received. I am committed to making amends.
Oh, Eric, just listening to her, looking at her makes me mad because this was a tough case to prove, as you know. Those prosecutors, I can't imagine how many hours of sleep they lost in doing this case. I remember talking to Creighton Wooders about it when we did a panel at CrimeCon on it. I mean, he spent countless hours trying this case And the case was proven. Alec Murdaugh was proven to have murdered his wife, Maggie, proven to have murdered his son, Paul. And now all that work might be for nothing because of someone inserting themselves in this process to get their 15 minutes of fame. Eric, it's nauseating for me. I'm sure it is for you.
The Chief Justice said that he presides over all clerks of court and other officers of the court, as well as the bailiffs, and that the public trust has been eroded, even though Becky didn't plead guilty to things that had to do with the jury verdict. She was a prominent part of this trial. She was always on camera. She talked during the breaks in the court. And I think that the Chief Justice was mortally offended by what she did, and did that have an effect on the jurors? The other thing was, I think they latched on to Chief Justice Toll saying that when she made her decision not to grant a new trial, she said, "I find Becky Hill not to be entirely credible." Well, the Associate Chief Justice John Few said, well, that means she lied during her testimony, doesn't it? And Creighton had to concede on that. It was really a difficult day for those of us that believe that Alex Murdaugh is guilty, that there was plenty of circumstantial murder evidence. In addition, we believe that the financial crimes were a motive for him and that there was that gathering storm. But at the end of the day, that's what the work that I did, my partner Ronnie Richter did, Mark Tinsley and Justin Bamberg, to get him convicted of those financial crimes. Because, Julie, he's never going to get a fresh breath of air. He's doing 27 years in state prison, and consecutively, when he gets out, he has to do 40 more in federal prison. So even if this case is retried, it may be a hung jury. I think he's going to be convicted even on a retrial. But there is a possibility, though, that the Supreme Court could send it back to Justice Toll to do a Remmer standard instead of the State v. Green standard. The Remmer standard, remember, for getting a new trial for juror interference is all you have to show is the interference with the jury. Justice Toll said she didn't find interference. I think the Supreme Court did. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think there is a high probability that he will get a new trial because you have to listen to the oral arguments. They took Creighton much harder over the coals than they did Phil Barber, Dick Harpootlian, or Jim Griffin. Mm-hmm. And I also think it was a mistake, Julie, for Creighton to do both arguments on the appeal because he's trying to preserve his jury verdict. And oftentimes trial lawyers don't do the appeal because they're trying too hard to keep what they earned. You understand?
Right. Oh, very much so. Very much. It's unusual. It's very unusual. Typically, someone else who strictly does appeals would handle the appellate work on behalf of the Attorney General's office there. And I'm sure it does feel personal for him in the sense that there's an attachment to your cases when you're fighting for justice. When you're a prosecutor, you're fighting for victims, you're fighting the good fight, so to speak. And so I'm sure it's tough to let it go and put it in someone else's hands. Perhaps that's why we saw him, as you mentioned, Eric. It's been a remarkable case for so many reasons, and this is just one more. And really, I think at the end of the day, and you understand this, Eric, the Sixth Amendment, as you said, the right to a fair trial for a defendant is paramount over everything in a criminal case. Yes. And so even though there's a mountain of evidence substantiating that this guy did this, if he was deprived of that right that belongs to him legally as an American citizen, then it stands to reason that he should get a new trial. So we'll see if the justices find that deprivation. Yes, go ahead, Eric, quickly.
Julie, the reason we have the best system in the world is because it works for the worst of us, not just the best of us.
Yep.
The worst have to get the same that the best of us get. And that's why we have the best judicial system in the world. Yeah,
it's so true. He is owed that right. And if they find he was deprived of it, we'll be covering the trial. Eric Bland, always great to have your insights. Thank you.